Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. And today it's the start of a brand new analysis series to kick off 2024. We are tackling the juggernaut that is Quantic Dream's Heavy Rain. Speaking for me, I know I've been waiting to cover this for a long time. It's one of my favourite games that I've ever played, even though I've only played it once. I'm pretty sure it's the same for you, lad.
A few times, actually. Like, the thing is with me, though, is that this was a PS3 exclusive back in the day. They only had, like, the rights of Sony. And back when it came out in 2010, I was an Xbox 360 kid. So I watched YouTubers play it, you know? So I don't have an authentic blind playthrough experience of this game, which is quite saddening, really. But yeah, eventually, like, I remember, like, my friend who had a PS3 went on holiday one day, and I had to look after like the house and feed the cat. They had a PS3, so I made sure I played Heavy Rain then. I replayed it a bunch of times, and then recently we covered it on the channel live. So thank you again to everyone who joined and played it. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs as we played it. But yeah, absolutely fantastic game, mate. One I'm obsessed with. And obviously we did Detroit Become Human like not long ago, or last year, didn't we? So I think we're always waiting and licking our lips at the chance to cover this one next.
Yeah, and the thing is, with both of them games, like we played together, didn't we? Obviously, yeah, like you say, Detroit last year, but obviously Heavy Rain is when I visited you and you was in your final year of uni. And I was thinking, like, damn, like Until Dawn, it's going to take some topping, and like I feel like this game goes up very close because it ticks a lot of boxes, as you well know. Like I like my crime and stuff. But yeah, there's other things like I don't know, we might tap into spoilers throughout the series. I don't know, but we'll try to refrain from it as much as possible. But we'll cover them as to when we get to them. But yeah, basically, guys, how this is going to work, because obviously it was a long time ago that I played my playthrough of it. I can't necessarily remember everything, so there'll be moments where I do chime in. A lot of it's just going to be like casual observations, but what I've done is I've done a little bit of research to try and see what like branching's possible in certain chapters and like just general fun trivia stuff about the game. Whereas I think Liam's going to be like, maybe leaning slightly more into like his playthrough. So yeah, I mean, let's kick off, mate. I mean, obviously the opening shot, it has like the 6 boxes thing, doesn't it, with like the different screens and the different angles of just Ethan casually laying in bed. I'm just going to say this like right off the bat. I know I did in the other video, but the whole split screen thing that this game employs, I absolutely adore it. It is like a moving comic strip, and it's just a brilliant way of like showing like sort of the profiles of different characters and what their point of view is and stuff like that. I don't know if you think the same.
I do, and because obviously I found Quantic Dream through Fahrenheit, which came out like 5 years prior, I think, and they were notorious for it. One of the first scenes, I was bang on about it, but it's like a really tense scene where you have to like clean up this crime scene, and then the other camera angle has a cop in the next room, and it's so tense because you're trying to clean up, but you see this cop moving towards your room, and you're like, it's proper tense. This one, does the same tricks, but for the introduction that we're talking about right now, yeah, like it does it in a very different manner. Like it's a very slow-paced start where you're waking up. But I less so now. I still think the graphics hold up, but I remember back in 2010, I honestly thought like the graphics were next to realistic. Like I generally was so sold by it. Like it's like looking at a real film here. But yeah, like everything from the lighting, the music, and yeah, the camera work you mentioned is just phenomenal.
I think it was quite a while, over a decade ago, but like I said, I think it does really still hold up well. Like, I know that sort of like a criticism you could level is like the whole graphics thing. Like, it isn't as sophisticated as, say, Detroit Become Human, but I'd take that over something, I know obviously the graphics aren't like realistic, but something as like sharp as terms of like maybe The Expanse, for example. But obviously that branching sucks. Like, I'd much rather have something like Heavy Rain, but yeah, I mean, it started off, it's basically a tutorial, isn't it? You're walking around as Ethan, you're basically learning the different QTEs and things, and obviously there's this thing here, we've got the thoughts thing, mate, where obviously you can see what Ethan's thinking. Do you think that that's like a really good feature in this game, like something a bit different that maybe like other studios could use going forward?
Yeah, I really do. I think it's fantastic because say any scene where you're walking from A to B and that might be quite far away, like it's kind of a little ploy or device of something you can be doing as you're moving in a dead scene. So if you like have to walk to the other side of the room or to get to the garden, you might as well hold right click and see what Ethan's thinking. And it's also a great way of just kind of like setting an objective. Like traditionally you'd hit the pause button, find out what your objective is. This one keeps you in the game, and it does it with default, so you get the character's feelings and emotions across. So yeah, honestly, really ahead of its time, absolutely cutting edge, I'd say.
I really like it. I do feel that later on in the game, and obviously as you're watching this, you've probably played the game, so you'll know the twist. I do think it somewhat doesn't make sense. Like the feature almost like works against itself later on in the game. You'll know what I'm on about if you've played the game, but like I said at the top, I'll try and refrain from spoilers as much as possible. But overall, I think it's such a good feature, and I think you then couple that with like, well, I mean, we've done the QTE video already, but there's just so much variation with like the QTEs, and you're doing like these basic things like, you know, juggling tennis balls or brushing your teeth, and like just like these little things to get you practicing. I just think it's obviously the variation is so cool, but like it was just fun as well, like to do it like that, you know. Like other games, they'll try and maybe throw you in with something a little bit more serious, but doing like these little mundane things that they did as well in Detroit Become Human, I just really enjoyed it.
I think as well, like, obviously I didn't really have it on my recent playthrough of my PC, but I don't know if you remember this from when we played back on my PS4, mate. But like, for example, in the morning you've got to brush your teeth, but it had the PlayStation Move controls with it. So you had to physically grab your controller and move it left to right like you were actually brushing your teeth.
You're misinterpreting the competition. It's Master Chef, not Master Bait.
And there's a thing we mentioned in the QTE video, so I won't, go too deep on it, but it's just more immersive, isn't it? Like whether you're turning a door and you're using the analog, whether you're doing like your archaeology, architecture kind of drawings, and you have to like do long lines and stuff. I don't know. It's just something that just keeps it ahead of other games. That's just really brilliant.
It's just a subtle way, isn't it, of like immersing you and making you feel more like the character. It's like that, when you play other games and you're just hitting a button and they're doing a certain action and it just doesn't quite feel right. Like the motion controls, you're marrying what they're doing, and obviously where the story goes later on, I think it's those little subtle things that can really make you feel like you're the character, and therefore you become more invested in their story, because like Heavy Rain, let's face it, it's quite a heavy hitting story, quite a few places, so it really helps the player like get some like emotional angle on it as well. So I think all these things are really effective. But you know what, before I move on, I did want to quickly say about the menu. I know this is like quite a minor point, but I just love these little details. You know how like when you hit the pause menu and you can see like sort of like the ripples from the rain, like it's hitting the screen, like the rest of it sort of blurs out in the background and you've got the menu, but then you've got like these little ripples, and it's just like little things like that. They could have just done a plain menu, and just slapped a character's face on it or whatever, but they didn't. They like added like these little things, and it's just, you notice them more and more like as you go back to these games, and I feel like my opinion on Quantic Dream just continues to grow and just makes me think, damn, I wish that they was able to churn out games more often, because that is absolutely incredible.
Tell you what as well, like, because obviously we always talk about like the variation in the QTEs. Like there's one where you have to hold it, there's one where you've kind of got to like go around with the analog, there's some where you have to move your mouse up and down frantically. It's cool as well, they have a controls thing, but they also kind of have like a little monitor thing that kind of displays how you're supposed to do those actions, like press and hold down the indicated button simultaneously until they disappear. Like it actually explains and holds your hand a little bit, so if you're maybe not an avid gamer but you want to play the story-based game, it will actually help you. And you have that in, like you say, the beautiful ripple menu as you mentioned, which just is another thing to praise.
Yeah, so obviously we then follow Ethan. He's going around the houses and he's waiting for Grace and his two sons to come back, and you can do several things. You can do the architect drawing. I think when they come back, you can put some plates away. You can go out in the garden, and I think that actually gets you an achievement as well, doesn't it, mate? Doing them three things, it gets
it does. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like it's cool if you're a trophy hunter, achievement hunter. There's so many little ones. Like there's pretty much one for every little chapter. So like it just gives you a little nugget incentive to do certain things, which is cool.
But yeah, another little sort of Easter eggy thing I noticed as well was like, obviously I've got to call it out. It's, you know, the Butterfly Effect podcast, but you can see like little butterflies like hanging as part of the decoration in the front room as well, which I thought was really cool. And another thing, this is something that I didn't actually notice first time round, but again, revisiting this game, I'm noticing more and more. The music in this game is superb, and I know it's going to be a weird thing to call it, but I'm talking about like when they're doing the sword fight. Like, you know how it's sort of like they're out in the garden, they're having fun, but then it puts like this sort of semi-serious music on, like they're in an action movie or something. It gets a little bit heroic, and you've got the QTEs like, well, you're sword fighting with your son and stuff like that. And I don't know, like they could have just put any old. They could have just not put music in at all, to be honest. But they didn't. It's almost like, again, you're immersing yourself as Ethan or the little kid, and you're in their head and they're having so much fun. It's like background music because they're a hero. And it does that quite a bit in this game. And of course, each of the characters have got their own theme as well. So it nicely ties in with that. And I just think that I can't remember the guy's name who did it now. I think it was like Norman someone. But whoever composed the music in this game, big thumbs up from me. Like, I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, I do. The piano, like the main theme of Heavy Rain, is just like a masterpiece. I absolutely love it. And the thing you mentioned, I was going to touch on it, so I'm glad you did, about each character having their different theme, like Norman, Scott, Madison later on, we'll all figure out they get their own themes. That's something that they've always done. Fahrenheit, every character get their own theme, and then Detroit Become Human, every character get their own theme. And what I like about it as well is that usually you'll have a different composer do a different character. That way, like, they bring their own sort of touch and vibe to that character. So like, if we looked at Detroit Become Human, like Kara's, it was very much like kind of like sad violins, you know, kind of isolating out in the cold. You would get that, while Marcus was more of like a heroic. Connor was more sort of like techie, like gadgety kind of thing. And this one does it as well. I think each character's theme is matched to perfection. And yeah, just honestly, like, it doesn't really hit a bum note, really. Like, we've already talked about graphics, QTEs, gameplay, little features, and now we're talking about music. But yeah, Heavy Rain just hits so many, like, it ticks so many boxes.
So what I'm going to do, Matt, now, mate, obviously I know that there's not really any choices. This is basically like a little tutorial, really, the prologue, isn't it? But I wanted to give you some like little trivia based on this scene that I found from this site, and I think some of it's quite cool. So the first one is that it says that, you know, Ethan picks up a note from Grace that says she's picking up the kids from school. But apparently, like moments earlier, you can see that it's actually a Saturday. Now, to us, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but apparently it says here that because Quantic Dream is a French studio, it was once common for like the schools to close on like a Wednesday and have classes on a Saturday instead. And then that apparently got changed like a year later before the game come out or something. So there's like little details like that. In terms of choices, it's actually possible to like skip setting up the table. So you can like quickly walk out to like the back garden and like play with the kids before like even the plates have got out. And then I think if Ethan loses the sword fight with Jason, Sean like runs over to Ethan and checks on him, and that literally mirrors something that you see later on in like one of the last chapters of the game, like called the Old Warehouse. So like there's sort of like some like nice like contextual sort of like tie-ins there that actually I thought were like quite an interesting read. Because I did want to actually find out whether you knew or whether someone in the comments, but if you fail certain QTEs or if you don't do certain things, you know, like the plates, or if you don't take the bags off Grace, for example, whether like there's a mini moment where she gets pissed off at you or something like that.
Yeah, like with the sword fight thing as well, like the first time I saw someone play it, they let the kid win. It was like, yeah, it's their birthday, we'll be nice. But now, like, I've seen that, I just find it funny on second playthroughs just to beat the shit out of my son. Just get a sword, just win every QTE, absolutely batter the kid. I'm like, yeah, you're not winning. Welcome to the real world, son. But as for the other stuff, yeah, I didn't know a lot. I didn't know it was on a Saturday, for example. That is news to me. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then the thing you mentioned as well about like the mirror scene, you know, like that kind of mirrors something in the Old Warehouse scene. But that's really, really cool. I like it when they throw in little intricate details like that. So if you're like a literature fanatic, you can kind of suss out these things.
I feel like now, mate, we're going to move on to arguably the most iconic scene in the game, or at least one of. It's the mall scene, right? You're there with your kids and Grace. You're doing a bit of shopping, and I mean, yeah, what can I say? Like, the name Jason, I mean, it's tough to say it normally now because I feel like with this game, it's become so normalised. Just be like, Jason, Jason. You can, like, I saw something online that said that it actually become a thing, like press X for Jason or something like that. But what were your, like, overall thoughts of this scene, like, when you first played it, mate? Because obviously the ending's pretty hard-hitting, right?
It is. It, like, first of all, we're talking about the meme. It's just so iconic. What I love as well is that, like, obviously we cover a very niche set of games, right? But it doesn't matter, like, who you are, where you are. If you kind of know video games or look at any kind of, like, meme thing anyway, if someone says Jason, you know bloody hell what that means. Everyone knows press X to Jason. It was lovely, actually, because when I streamed it, like, whenever those scenes would happen, I would get the chat to flood me with Jasons, and it's fantastic, just the way everyone just unites together to yell out the word Jason. It's funny, because I remember back in school as well, like, we had someone who became an early dad, and his name was Jason, and he called his son Sean, and you wouldn't hear the end of it. We're just, like, yelling Jason and Sean all the time. But, yeah, I mean, in terms of the actual scene, though, it's... yeah, like, it is hard-hitting. It's one of those ones where one bullet point I want to say is, how on earth does Jason die when Ethan definitely takes the brunt of that car? Like, I don't get how, like, that conclusion's happening. I feel like they need to make it a little bit more kind of, I don't know, realistic if they are going to go for that. But, I don't know, a little nitpicky quarrel. And I think the only other thing I kind of really thought of is whether she's got reason to do it. Because obviously it does end up leading to a death, but I think it's probably at this point where we end up kind of like getting a little sour with Grace really early doors, just the way that, like, you know, Jason runs off, and it's not really your fault, you're just trying to fetch money out your pocket, and the game's like being awkward, it'll make it the last pocket you check, but the way your wife is like proper laying into you and like almost calling you like an incompetent father in public, it's like, Jesus. I don't know if you weren't a fan of Grace as early as this scene, mate.
To be honest, I didn't even really think about it that much. I think I was so, like, concerned with just, like, finding the kid. But I didn't know that. The game always makes you check to the last pocket. So, like, no matter where you start, you always get to the last one.
Yeah, like, if you check your back pockets first, I'm pretty sure they put it in the front one. It would just be the fourth pocket you check. I'm pretty sure that, or I'm really unlucky, and I've always got it last try. But I think I've played the game about 4 times, and I swear it's always in the last pocket, mate.
Oh, fair enough. But yeah, going back to your point about Grace, I don't know, she felt quite background to me, so I can't quite remember what my view on her was, but I think I just didn't really have a view. I was, like, more focused on, like, the kids and Ethan, to be honest with you. But obviously, yeah, they both get hit by the car. And again, I'm going to nitpick as well now. But why, like, as Ethan, why would he yell across the road? Like, you can see your son, he's there, like, he's like, Jason! He's sort of like, no, like, he's fine, like, he's on the other side of the road, and then the kid just, like, wanders out. And you just think, oh, come on, man, like, you could have just followed him, you could have just, you know, done anything. You didn't have to encourage him back across the road, but nitpick.
One thing I want to ask you while we're kind of like, we've sort of had 2 sort of Ethan scenes here. Like, obviously, there isn't really a main character. There's 4 we play as. If you had to pick a main one, it probably would be Ethan, since he's kind of really at the core of the story. But, like, what do you make of Ethan as, like, a main character to play as?
I think he's quite a good character. Because actually, the thing is, I mean, there is certain stuff in my gameplay that would lend to this. But when you think about it, like, he sort of is a bit of an incompetent father. Or at least you could level that argument at him, because I mean, obviously, the loss of a child, But I mean, like, you could argue that sure, like, maybe he should have been a bit firmer on Jason to keep him nearer to him. Obviously, skipping forward a bit, there's his other son in the future as well. It's just like these little moments, like, even like when you're at the house, and I'm jumping forward a bit here, but like I in my playthrough, like I chose not to go get the teddy bear. Like I just let him like, no, I'm going back downstairs. You can stay on your own. So yeah, there's like a certain amount of greyness to him, but he's quite a sympathetic character as well. You can't help but feel sorry for the guy that he's lost his one child at this point, and obviously it hasn't worked out. It's obviously been quite a traumatic thing between him and Grace as well. She obviously holds a lot of resentment for him and his actions in that particular moment. But I think that's the whole point, right? I think you're meant to sort of feel like that way about him, but then that's what the trials are for. And I think that's what the killer's basically ultimately testing him on, is like, how worthy of a father is he? And I think obviously depending on how you play it depends on the outcome you get. So yeah, I think, quite appropriately, because it's called Heavy Rain, I think he's a little bit grey, mate. What about you?
Yeah, it's one of those ones where like I think there is an argument to say he's pretty one-dimensional, but I think he has to be, because he's got, what, is it like 2 days or something to find, like his son or whatever, which is like going to be the story of the game. It's not really a spoiler. And I'm sure we've all played it anyway. But so like he's just a man on a mission basically. So we don't get any other kind of like, we don't get any real humor from him because, the guy's going through like a really horrible situation. So yeah, like you could say he's one-dimensional, but I feel like he couldn't really be anything else. But I feel like the game makes up for it because he arguably might have like probably the best missions. I just really enjoyed the trials, I mean that's like kind of a debate for another episode because we did that Detroit Become Human characters, didn't we? But yeah, no, I think he holds up as a main character. But what's great about Quantic Dream, if he's not your cup of tea, then you've got like 3 others to play as. So yeah, you can take your pick, can't you?
Yeah, that's it. And you know what? I'm going to quickly share, while we are talking about this whole mall scene, this other little bit of trivia. So obviously, David Cage, who like basically, wrote the game or produced the game?
Yeah.
This chapter is actually based on a real life event with himself, his wife and his child when they lost their kid in a shopping mall. So like, I don't know, like I find that amazing, like how you can like, obviously like writers use their own experiences and stuff, but damn, like to then put that in a game and then obviously like have the horrendous ending that it was. Sweet. So obviously we then move on to like the credit sequence, and a quick observation here, which I'm guessing was really intentional, but I do love how like the prologue was full of colour. Like it was very bright, and obviously that would reflect Ethan's mood, right? He's very happy. He's got a family. He's playing with his kids in the garden. They're all together. Everything's good. And then it cuts to this like pre-credit sequence after you obviously hear about the death of Jason, and it's suddenly really miserable, really gloomy, really grim, and just like lots of like greys and browns. I just feel like on a visual thing, I thought that was so well executed, because it was like, again, you're like in Ethan's mind at this point, like everything, the whole world has just become a lot more miserable after losing his child. But similar to the Detroit credit sequence, it's just a great way of seeing the world and like showing the various characters that within it. I don't know if you've got anything to add, mate.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you touched on that because I was going to as well. Like, obviously, you get to hear the lovely piano sequence. Detroit Become Human ends up doing something similar where you get a really nice piano score as well. But yeah, no, I really love it. Even from like, yeah, like you say, it really is Ethan's mood, isn't it? And you can see it in his fashion. He's wearing all these like sort of like white button-down shirts. And then later on, when he goes to his gloomy apartment, he's wearing sort of like dark clothes, like this dark rugged jumper, which looks like it hasn't been washed in a little bit or whatever. One observation I made is that in the intro, there's like the characters that like face the screen and they look kind of somber, like in the sequence. One of them's this old lady, and I'm pretty sure it's Anne Shepherd, who we encounter later in the game. So I don't know if that's like a little Easter egg that I've heard. I might be wrong. I looked back and I didn't see her, so I don't know if it's one that was originally for PS3 and then they removed it. I'm unsure. But yeah, that's just an observation I had myself.
Again, that would be so cool as well, because again, like future replays, like you'd recognise that character. Oh my god, like I've sort of already met you, like I've seen you from the very get-go. But I mean, yeah, I guess we'll rock on. Obviously, Sean gets picked up from school. Ethan's a bit of a miserable sod, as you can expect. and they go back to this house that looks, it's a bit of a tip, really, isn't it? You can see that they've fallen from grace a little bit due to the whole sort of circumstances with the marriage and sort of the death of Jason. But yeah, I mean, again, a nice little sequence. It really does remind me of the home, Todd's house in Detroit Become Human, just like the layout of it. But a really good little scene again where you can, and again, I go back to it. It's like details. It's the whole, you can look at the clock on the wall and you can see the schedule in the kitchen, and you've got all these little things to do, like get him a snack. You can pop upstairs and get him some medication because he's got a bit of a headache or something. You can make him dinner. He does his homework. Again, it feels like very everyday things, which on paper should sound really boring, but I don't know what it is. Like, it just wasn't for me, like when I played. What about you?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the QTEs we mentioned. Like, it's kind of satisfying as you do it. But also, it's just the fact as well, they throw all these little freebies in there where if you want, you can go outside, play basketball. You can pick up some oranges, impress him with your juggling. So yeah, there's just a lot to be doing. And yeah, no, I completely agree with you, lad.
Oh yeah, here's another example of where Ethan's like a really bad father. If you pick the pizza and you pop it in the microwave, which by the way was the quickest microwave for a pizza ever. I think it was in there for about 10 seconds, and he takes it out like it's a really hot plate. But like he'll then cut it up, and then he gives like the tiniest slice to his son, and then there's like 3/4, like more than that even, like he just like tosses to the side. I'm just thinking, Jesus Christ, like I know things are hard, but bloody hell, like you've given your son like one bit of pizza.
Cost of living crisis. He's not having any more slices, mate.
It is, like, honestly, it was hilarious. And then the guy, like, he's just drinking straight from the bottle. Like when you're back in the prologue, he just like necks orange juice straight from the bottle, puts it straight back, and then he does the same with like beer in the fridge in like the new sort of grotty place as well. I just found it absolutely hilarious, like, to point out.
There's a trophy which is, to stick to the schedule where you do everything on time. So it's pretty rewarding when you stick to that, but also to put him to bed in a good mood. And I just love it because I remember the original playthrough that I let you play at mine, and he did everything right until the very end, and that's just because you couldn't be asked to go downstairs and get his teddy. And I just remember how savage you were. You're like, no, go to bed. And I was like, oh, that's funny.
I do love that. That's the thing, though. Like when I typically know that I'm only going to play a game once, because obviously, like, I did the same with Detroit. I'll mostly play good, but I will like throw some curveball decisions in there. When I know that I'm only going to play it once, because obviously it was PlayStation, I was like, yeah, like there's going to be certain things like just for my own entertainment that I'm going to do. It was the same as in Detroit, like when I think I was playing as Connor and like I forgot what the guy's name, the guy who created the robots. But he basically like says, he tests you. That's it, Kamsky. And he basically tests you like whether to shoot his like robot assistant or not, the one that's in the menu of the game. And I was just like straight up shot. It's just like it's something I wouldn't do like if I knew I was going to play it again, because I'd want to keep them all alive, you know. But if it's one playthrough, I'd do this sort of thing, just go savage with it. All right, mate. So what I'm going to do is I've got the next chapter up for like all other things that could have happened and just like general trivia stuff. Oh, here we go. So yeah, here's one. So if the player allows Sean to stay up late, he will fall asleep on the couch at 10. The player is then prompted to carry him to his bed, change him into his pyjamas and tuck him in. However, the player can leave the room and end the chapter without changing Sean into his pyjamas. And there's another one here as well, that the chapter can actually be ended really quickly as well. You can just go and turn the TV off, and then if you just say to Sean no twice, Sean goes off in a strop up to bed. And I just love that, like, even like in this scene, which, do you know what I mean, it's not going to have like a massive impact on the story as a whole, there's like so much variation, there's like loads more here as well, but obviously I'll bore you by like reading the whole lot. But yeah, like it's just, I don't know, it's just like these little details, like, because obviously everyone's going to play it differently, and like that whole schedule and time thing that really does actually come into it in that scene, like more than what I thought it would.
No, it's incredible. I knew about the strop thing, but I didn't know you could just let him crash on the sofa. But I guess, yeah, they'd have to cover that because someone might not actually choose to, like, prompt him to go to bed. So yeah, that is actually nuts, and it's cool they leave those in there.
So then, obviously, Ethan leaves Sean's room. He has a bit of a blackout. And we then cut over to our next character that we're seeing in this game, mate. This next playable character, Private Detective Scott Shelby, who's rocking up. He's doing his own private detecting for... Well, he's looking for a boy called Johnny, isn't he? Or he's not... Well, no, actually, scrap that. He's not looking for him. He's looking for Lauren to basically talk about him. And, I mean, she basically shoots you out the door, but then a bald man comes along, receding hairlines again. And, he then comes in and basically, you know, starts to piss around with her and starts hitting her and stuff. And it breaks out into our fight. First fight scene of the game, lad. What do you make of it?
Yeah, love it. Like, it's tense. Like, the QTEs are quite challenging. Chances are you're not going to hit everyone. You might miss a few. And it's cool because it means the bald guy gets some punches in and it looks like it could be a tense fight. That, you know, we always mention it with Quantic Dream whenever there's a combat scene and you're on the edge of your seat because you think you might be losing it. And while with other games, if you're just passing them, you think, oh yeah, this is a breeze. I'm just getting through it. But Quantic Dream really make it tense. But yeah, no, it's fantastic. I absolutely love this fight scene. How about you?
Yeah, no, I really like it as well. And I think it honestly just comes back like what we've said already with like these QTEs and the cinematic angles. It really keeps your eye moving. It's not like you're repeating the same one over and over again. I was pretty sure I counted like 3 or 4 different types of QTE in that one fight. So you've got the one where you just hit the button once. You've got the button where you can like spam it for whatever particular reason. You've got like an analog moving one as well. So do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you sort of other games where like maybe they're a little bit guilty of just giving you one set of QTE at one particular moment. You've got all these other things and you've got to also judge the fight as well and like everything that's going on in the scene. So yeah, honestly, I really, really like it. It's a good way to introduce Scott Shelby, and it was not long after this scene where I actually said that he was my favourite character when I did my first playthrough, if I'm not mistaken. So you all know how that turns out.
Yeah, it is really cool though because it shows the variety. Like, already we've got such variation in characters. We have like someone who's like a dad who's going through tough times, and then we have like a PI who's like, you know, trying to just like do whatever it takes, you know, to solve and crack his case basically. So, you know, if that means violence and, you know, like saving a damsel in distress, then he'll happily do that. So it's nice that we get a good bit of variety because it's like you've got the emotion on one side and then we've got raw action on the other in the next chapter. One thing I wanted to say about this scene, mate, which did like kind of grind my gears a little bit, is the dialogue section with Lauren. I mean, not only did I create a really good short out of it.
You should take your clothes off. We ain't got all day.
Actually, I'm not a customer.
I'm not? What? But when I was speaking to Lauren, like, you know, like when you have the dialogue, it gives you a word rather than what you're actually going to be saying, like Telltale might do. So it might say something like skeptical, problematic, diplomat, something like that, and then he'll eventually go into his dialogue. I ended up picking sort of something along the words of like caring or like sincere. And I ended up saying to like Lauren, oh, I know what you're going through, to the lady who's lost her son. And I was like, that's not what I wanted to say. That is like one of the worst things you can say to someone who's going through trauma. It's to say, oh yeah, I know what you're going through. Like, that's never worked in the history of like, you know, conversation. And I was fuming because when I think I have passed that in the past, but when I was doing my replay, I think she can give you info and stuff, and I actually didn't get that. So like I missed out on the trophy in that section. But yeah, like I really like the dialogue system in Heavy Rain, but that one I did feel was a little misleading or a little kind of like not informative enough, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that when they do that in games, and you sort of like, no, because you then know that you're like funneled into like that particular line, you know, that particular path. But at this point in the game, it's quite fortunate, isn't it? Because it doesn't necessarily mean much. But yeah, like it could happen like, later on in the game, and you're like, damn, like, that was like really costly. But yeah, so I've got here, you can like beat Troy, that gets you an achievement. And then you've got Private Eye as well, where you can like lead Lauren to talk about your son. But yeah, in terms of like little trivia things, apparently like if you wait long enough before entering Lauren's apartment, Troy, like when you go in, Troy's already given her a black eye, which I think is quite cool. It's again like not cool. That sounds terrible. But I mean, like,
Jack promoting domestic violence there.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds terrible.
What do you want, asshole?
Lauren, is everything all right?
She's just swell. Now beat it, loser!
Which I think is quite cool. No, I mean in the sense that just like these little details, like when we did The Wolf Among Us, like how like, you know, if you turn up at a certain location first or like probably like second, you can like turn up, you know, sort of bloody and worn and stuff. It seems like it's a very similar thing here. And then I think what I wanted to ask you though, mate, is have you seen it? What happens like if you lose the fight to Troy?
I've not. No, I've never lost it.
You've never lost it. I mean, to be fair, I've got this thing here. It says Troy will leave Lauren's apartment regardless whether Scott wins or loses. If Scott loses, he'll compliment Troy saying he's got a good right hook. So to be honest, I mean, as expected, it sounds like it's pretty linear anyway. It's just dependent who wins the fight or not. But do you know what I mean? Like, again, like it's a nice little branch, you know, to suggest that your QTEs do matter. It's not like one where, you know, you could literally just put the controller down and get the same result as someone that actually did the QTEs. So it's still good, those little things, because it still makes it feel worthwhile to actually act in those moments.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely in the earlier stages of the game, it's naturally going to be a lot more linear because we're discovering who the characters are. Like, this is literally like, you know, 10 minutes into like meeting Scott, so like they're not going to be able to like kill him off, you know. But it is cool that, you know, despite the fact that we have to get the same result, that they'll give you different paths to get there. So yeah, no, I absolutely respect that. One thing I want to mention to you, like, before we wrap this video up is, and I know it'll probably be more relevant when we say it in the next chapter as well, when we meet other characters, but I do find it funny how every playable character in this game has something wrong with them medically. Because, like, obviously Ethan has his blackouts, and then we see Scott in the hallway with his asthma with the inhaler, and I'm just like, wow, like, yeah, they need to is there no character who's got, like, you know, no sort of like medical like quarrel here?
Oh yeah, because Thingy's got the tryptocane thing, isn't he? And then Madison, isn't it sleep? Isn't it insomnia?
Yeah, she's an insomniac. Yeah.
So yeah, then obviously Troy buggers off, and that's the end of the scene, and that's probably where we're going to end for this analysis episode. Of course, we'll be meeting up with, it's Norman, isn't it, the FBI agent, and Madison in analysis 2. Is there any other overall comments that you want to add, mate, before we wrap up?
Nah, just Jason.
Good stuff. It's really good covering Heavy Rain again. Obviously, if you do want to go watch the gameplay, look in the playlist. Liam's done a playthrough there already, so you can go and watch that. And yeah, otherwise, we will see you next Sunday for analysis 2 of Heavy Rain. Catch you later.
See you in a bit, guys. Take care.